in our discussion. But I think that it is a good moment, at least in this part of the semester, in the summer term, to see again the power of all these other forms of movements that we already acknowledged at the very first week in the semester. Because we have been paying attention to social movements in general, protest levels, wave of protests, even revolutions. But this discussion at this particular moment is helping us to consider that there is also power in other expressions in the collectivity and at the individual level. So this is part of the discussion that I would like to bring at this moment in the semester. Probably you recall this graph that we had the opportunity to examine in week number 2 in the summer term by Paul Almeida in the book of Structure of Collective Action, where he kind of compared two different variables, and by doing that, he assigned 5 different expressions or categories of social movements or social movement activity, right? So considering the level of social movement activity here and the level of threats that the social movement or the expression of social movement give to the power holders, this means the political authorities or economic elites or powerful people. So we can have these 5 different categories. We have been studying a lot in the past few weeks local movements emerging at the local level. Then we have been studying, of course, this is the name of the class, social movements in general, considering several expressions at the transnational level, at the national level, and we have been paying attention to all these internal dynamics. And the most important feature that we defined there was that social movements require the sustained collective action and organized collective action. We also study wave of protests. We also study revolutionary movements, but we slightly pay attention to everyday forms of resistance, everyday resistance, which represent by this graph, as we can see, the lowest form of threat to the national power holders and the lowest form of social movement activity, right? So this is the minor expression that we can have here. And this is not saying, we are not saying here that this is the least important. It is just that we are not seeing a very well organized structure, but we have to acknowledge that there is also an opportunity there when activists and with people, ordinary people, start to organize in an everyday resistance that we are going to see here. Okay, so what do we mean with this particular expression? Just to define a little bit, and then with our discussion for today, I would like to bring 4 cases that you also had the opportunity to familiarize with the assignment materials for today. So these are the everyday forms of resistance, which means the daily act of dissension and non-compliance by people that are not necessarily activists. And this is a very important characteristic compared to the other forms of social movement that we have been studying. We are not talking here about activists. We are talking here about ordinary people that not necessarily consider they are part of a social movement, that they are part of an organization, that they are just behaving in a certain manner that reflects dissension and non-compliance for something that they consider as an injustice or as a threat. We are talking about individuals or small groups of people who are somehow more excluded than others. People that don't even have the means in most of the cases to organize. They don't know how to organize or they don't have the resources to do it. So they are just resisting in a certain manner to avoid or to reject something that they perceive as an injustice or as a threat. So as I was saying before, in these expressions that we are going to define a little bit more later, we are seeing the smallest level of oppositional activity in all the several categories of social movements, actions that we have been previously studied. So compared to other forms of social movements, we are seeing here a powerful dynamic, but of course, a less organized dynamic that we also need to pay attention. So let's see some discussions and categories that the authors have been coined in order to see that these dynamics, right? Concepts that help us to see that there is something happening when non-organized people, when non-activist individuals start to do something to challenge something that they consider as a threat, or something that they consider as unfair, or start to propose certain solutions to something that needs to be changed.